Hey everyone. These are the patch notes that I tried to make for 9.16. I've not actually looked through the patch notes right now, so I can't really tell you what's going on. If this gains traction, people like this video, um, I'll absolutely go through the patch notes, like a patch rundown itself, and see how that changes things related to the game. But this is mostly what I felt was a really, really good move on Riot's part. What I think they should have done to kind of mix things up. I think that LS is right. The meta is kind of stale, and there are certain things that are just everything just kind of sucks right now. So by buffing up things that are a bit weaker, we can make sure that I think that we could have a more dynamic game. I th- I really don't like this whole TP meta. I don't like seeing like a bunch of late game carries that can safely get through sustain. Um, and I feel like this change also kind of affects the jungle as well. Jungle right now has this really awkward power curve where you're like the strongest player by a mile early on because of smites, because of how the jungle works, and then they just fall off late game. That's why you're seeing a lot of like Sejuani and whatever, Trundle. So without further ado, these are the big changes. So here's what I think would really help rein in like a lot of these really stale meta ideas. So the first is jungle because it's largely tanks and chain gankers. So like your Xin Zhao, your Jarvan. I haven't seen Xin Zhao in a while. Mostly Jarvan. Um, this is all due to the fact that red side is significantly more valuable than the blue side. Like every camp on the red side is more XP than any of the camps on the blue side. Blue side's good for farming, but if you don't have anything valuable in that side, like what good is it just doesn't make sense. So blue side is seriously undervalued. I wanted to put more experience into that, buff that up a little. And the other thing is this allows for counter jungling. If the blue side has more EXP, then there's something worth taking from your opponent. I don't know about increasing jungle timers or decreasing them, but I did want to put more experience into his jungle. See if that can get some carries going. Second thing, if you look at mid and ADC meta, there's an abundance of sustain and teleport, and both of these are allowing mid and late game picks to get to their big power spikes for essentially free. Azir, Corki, Kai'Sa, Ezreal. That's what you're mainly seeing, and it's because these champions don't like to fight so much early on, unless you're fighting on their terms, and those terms are very specific. So Kai'Sa, if you jump on her, she gets that full empowered Q on you. That's her terms. If you don't want to fight on those terms, if you want to fight her in the wave and poke her down from there, that's something that she really can't deal with. And by having sustain in those moments, she's able to safely get to that late game where she can get a really good ult off and hit someone with an empowered Q. By removing sustain or lowering it, I think that it makes these champions weaker in the early game, and it brings back a couple lane bullies. This might even bring back certain champions like Lucian, who just isn't or is kind of struggling right now for that reason. Lastly, I want to look at getting tank tops back. They're currently heavily bullied by ranged top laners and outscaled by basically Klepto. Drain tanks do beat them. I put GP under drain tank. I don't know why. Probably because of grasp. But him and Aatrox and Irelia are going to naturally outscale tanks, and with Conqueror, that is kind of amplified, and that's okay by my standards. These champions are naturally going to beat them. I don't want to like make those natural counters better for tanks, but what I do want to do is I want to get rid of since we're in the sustain tree and these squishy like ranged top laners are bullying them. I want to like start looking at Klepto, and I want to look at the sustain they get, and if we can remove that and or increase some stats in the resolve tree, I think that might make things a little more even, like a two-sided matchup for tanks. So let's get into masteries first. Masteries, this is the first thing I wanted to do. Second wind, I wanted to see that get a little bit of a buff. The rune feels kind of underwhelming unless you're in like one of those poke lanes where the damage is so minuscule that you just heal it up naturally. So I wanted to just buff that up a bit, make it better for tanks and bruisers. I don't want it to be too strong and like too strong, because if you add to the the base HP value, because I think it's like 4% of your missing HP plus 6. I think if you add to that, it might make it like synergize too well with Door and Shield, and then that champion just takes no damage whatsoever. Overgrowth, that one's a bit risky. It gives you 45 HP once it's fully stacked, and then it gives you 3.5% of your uh, total HP. So I wanted to move this to 5 HP per 8 minions, which would give you a total of 75. I mean, it's a stacking rune. I think if conditioning gets, what, like 5% of your armor and magic resist later on, buffing it by 30 is not going to be too much consequence. And I mean, I don't know, I want to open up the pick to tankier champions. Usually you see stuff like Unflinching and Revitalize, so uh, maybe you don't see Revitalize so much in like top laners. It's just a little something to make them feel better. Now let's see what else. Domination. The Domination tree is mainly what you're seeing when it comes to the sustain meta. For at least like the AD assassins, your fighters. Irelia is a really, really big user of this. This is kind of what's making her so hard to deal with in like the later stages of the game, and I wanted to lower it just a bit. So Taste of Blood, I don't think it's a problem later on, but early on, might as well lower that just a bit. Ravenous Hunter. Ravenous Hunter is the real big problem here. I wasn't sure if I wanted to fix the interaction with Shiv, because that's healing Yasuo for a very large amount. I didn't really want to fix it because I don't know if Yasuo is that good right now, so we'll skip that. But what I did want to do was I did want to lower the percentage damage that Ravenous Hunter heals for, because later on in the game this is a lot of sustain, and if you can pick this up very early on, this is a pretty OP rune. It's crowding out a lot of the other picks, and you're only seeing the others on really iffy champions. On top of that, this is giving you like way too much sustain on your AD assassins, even AP assassins like LeBlanc is getting just this massive amount of healing. She can go off to 2 waves, lifesteal it back up, whatever damage she took. Even if she's down to like 300, lifesteal off 2 waves, that's pretty much, I want to say, like an extra 500 HP, 600. Brings her back in fights, and I think that that's something that definitely needs to be put in check. Like I said, a lot of sustain is really crowding out a lot of other picks, so we tone that down, we buff up these other picks, maybe we can see something a little more dynamic there. And then inspiration, same thing. Biscuits. Ravenous Hunter is not always used. Frequently you will see people run inspiration and Time Warp Tonic, as well as biscuits for the mid lane and the ADC. I don't know how much I want to lower them, but I did want to lower biscuits 15 to 12%. Give a even start. I don't want to just suddenly nerf. That's never good for runes, because suddenly one is completely irrelevant again. So we just lower it a bit. There's only one where I just really hate the rune, and that's Kleptomancy. I think Kleptomancy is gross. I think Kleptomancy needs to be removed from the game. It's making it so that like the ranged top laners do not have a weak point against tanks, because like the tanks get their 1 and 2 item power spikes, but these ranged champions have the same items, even though theirs are like dramatically more expensive because they've been bullying them and they've been farming klepto stacks. So Kennen is going to get his proto belt around the same. Actually, Kennen's going to get it earlier than a tank is going to get his spirit visage or something like that. It's pretty gross. I don't like klepto at all. I think it makes it way too easy for people to stay in lanes, get aggressive. It gives you potions sometimes, which again adds to sustain. And most importantly, I think that the dumbest item that I would definitely remove from Klepto is the Elixir of Skill. It's deceptive how much damage it gets you because you get just an extra point on a skill, and it's just unintuitive to play against. And if worse comes to worse, just lower the gold to like 3. Just like, it doesn't need to give you 5. I don't know. But yeah, those are the big changes. Moving on to summoner spells. I think summoner spells just are not very good right now. I think they're underwhelming. They are 3-minute cooldowns at a minimum, and these spells just suck. Like, TP is good. TP lets you jump across the map on literally any champion. That's really nice. If you want to play cleanup with a champion, you take TP for a reason. These champions are really strong with TP, and it allows people to do way too much. So what ends up happening though is, unless these other summoner spells are equally as powerful in these micro situations where they're dueling with people, why would you resort to those when you could just run TP? If everything's like roughly, like, if you're not going to be getting like really really good kills off ignite or really good saves off heal, there's no reason to run them. You'll just run TP instead. So what I want to do is I want to bring back some of these other summoner spells that just aren't as good. Changes, barrier, increase the duration, I guess. I don't know. I think the shield is strong enough as is. So just increasing the duration is a really, really nice change for these champions. It helps block an extra tick of ignite, so it makes it for a pretty good counter for ignite. Um, give it a niche or something. If you're gonna make something strong, at least, especially according to Riot's new philosophy, giving it like a niche or like something that's really strong and counterplaying against is gonna make it, have like a purpose to be taken in games. If you're against Zed, he's gonna be taking ignite. You take barrier. Boom. There's a purpose. Not that you see Zed in your games probably. Ghost. Ghost is pretty Ghost is pretty okay right now. I think it could be more. I wanted to see it increase like how soon it accelerates. You only see it on certain champions. Even on Hecarim, you just don't see it anymore because it's usually better to just run like Flash in professional games. Like, if you're playing in a low elo game, running Ghost is absolutely fine because you can just run at people and you can Q them, you can proc conquer. But most of the time, it just ends up getting what's the word? Outclassed, and it just starts to shine a little less as you go higher up. You see it on Renekton and Darius as well in some games. Certain players, Renekton top only takes Ghost on Renekton, but outside of these specific instances, champions and players, you're not seeing it nearly as much as you could see it. And I would like to, open up to another couple picks. I know it was really bad in the Season 6 meta when mages were running it to avoid most ganks, but Rylai's been nerfed, that whole meta's been shifted, and I think mages are currently getting enough value out of TP that like changes in Ghost aren't going to be just suddenly what brings them back into the meta. Exhaust, really, I don't know what to do with Exhaust. Exhaust has sucked for like 2 years. Season 7, Corki was using it mid. Oh, what do you know? Corki's good again. Um, it's been pretty underwhelming since then, and you're only seeing it run on Yumi in some cases. I would like to see Exhaust get buffed. I'm not sure how, but maybe it grounds. That makes it really nice against Flash or something like that. I don't know. And then, last but not least, Heal and Ignite. Um, I would like to see buffs to these spells as well, but I really don't know what I would do with them. I know that like I don't want another CD decrease on Ignite. It's already really low. Uh, yeah, it was. The changes they made last season to lower Ignite's damage back to its original values and lower it to 30 seconds. That's not helpful for most champions. Most champions are like struggling to get a kill level 6, and that's why they take Ignite because it really helps in that kind of all-in situation. And I didn't. It was like what 90 extra damage at level 18. I don't really think it was that strong, but people were insistent that it was too strong, and they definitely don't want it in their game. So, for the sake of popularity and not getting too many people pissed, I would buff Ignite and heal, but people can't. I don't know what to do with heal, and people can't handle Ignite. So we'll just leave those for now. Itemization. Um, yeah, if we're nerfing sustain, I think the big thing is that mages are going to struggle. The reason they're staying in the meta is because with sustain, they can stay to the mid game and the late game without like really endangering themselves, but they don't have any impact in mid game skirmishes. Level 7, level 8, unless they have somehow um, outplayed an assassin or a fighter in the mid lane, there's very little they can do early on. I want to see them start ramping up faster. So, Lost Chapter changes back down to 1100 gold. It's been a while since it's been that. 1100 gold is going to be around 35 minions. For most players, that's going to be for really good players, that's going to be around the 4.5 minute mark. So about level 5. For most players, that's going to be around level 6 or the 6-7 minute mark. I think that's an okay change to make. I know people are upset about mages endlessly wave clearing, but part of or the issue is like if they don't have the ability to endlessly wave clear at a certain threshold, they're just not going to be like useful in these early game fights, and you kind of have to play around that really passively. And since we're nerfing that passive playstyle, I want to add a more active dynamic into playing a mage. We'll see some buffs to assassins later, so don't worry about that. What else? Spectre's Cowl, like I said, I wanted to see the tanks get a little more buffed, so we're just adding small changes to that. Slight buffs to Adaptive Helm, Spectre Cowl, Thorn Mail. The works. It's like what? 5 extra MR, 50 extra health if you're going for magic resist items, and then 50 if you're going for a Thorn Mail. I just think that some of the values are kind of low. Jungle. Listen, I don't know what I'm doing with jungle, okay? That I'm gonna be honest. Like the only thing I saw was like I looked at like the patch notes, I looked at how they got nerfed, and then I just slightly reverted them for blue side only. So if you saw the XP nerfs when they switched from like playing carry junglers like Kha'Zix to just only Sejuani, I just partially reverted those on blue side. I don't know a damn thing about the jungle. I just know that the blue side is really, really bad when it comes to experience. So I wanted to introduce some of that. I wanted to incentivize farming the blue side jungle because it is worth less than the red side. That's literally all I can tell you about it. Counter jungling, most people consider it bad, so they'd rather just perma gank. This is conversations with most jungle players. They tell me the same thing. So I wanted to think about how, or where really to put experience back into the jungle to make sure that these guys are scaling up. Little changes to the experience early on, not much. It's more later on where I want to see the experience start to level up because these champions start to like fall behind as the game goes on. And by encouraging them to farm their blue side and putting more experience into it, I think this is a really, really good start for just a start. But basically something where they farm more and gank less. Because, if there's incentive to farm blue side, champions might do that instead of, sitting in lanes. Okay. And then last but not least, there's going to be champions. This has been split up based on class. First off, bot lane. I think that with these sort of changes, Draven will be the number one AD carry in the game by a long shot. So, simply put, base AD down just a bit. AD is used in every single one of Draven's scalings. AD is used in his he auto attacks, of course. He's a heavy auto attack champion. It's used in his Qs as well. You're basically seeing um anywhere from 3 to 6 damage on every single thing that Draven does. So this might not look like a lot, but it adds up. Every time Draven autos a minion, That's down 4, 5 damage because of the spinning axe AP or AD ratio. So, um, it's it's something where you're going to see a slower push. Uh, he can't take leads as quickly. He can't do as much damage with those leads. I think that you know this is all theoretical, but I think that this would probably help put him in line if these sort of things happened. Um, what else? I think that Kaisa, Ezreal, and Corki especially would not need nerfs if the tools that they use all got nerfed. Since Ezreal is the most dependent on all of these things, I would possibly even buff Ezreal. So revert a Q nerf to him because he relies on TP. He relies on biscuits. He relies on Klepto. Um, Whereas all these other ones just use biscuits and TP. Klepto is his keystone, and if he can't use it properly or it's too weak on him, then he's just not going to be a champion anymore. Lastly, I hope that AFK farm meta goes away and it's bad for Sivir. I hate that champion. And then the last thing I would keep an eye on is Zion Rakan because I think that again, if we're looking at these early level bullies like Draven, you're gonna see Zion Rakan shoot up from S tier to S plus tier. So let's see what else. Janna, small buffs. I don't think Janna's really a champion. Maybe this will give her some sort of power. I don't know. Most champions need some low counterplay ability, and this allows them to function inside of a meta. So for Aftershock Lux, the reason she was so good was because the W is very low counterplay, but it also had high numbers. And if you're asking me, what do you mean it's a skill shot? Well, she's not going to miss the skill shot on her teammate because no, he's not going to be trying to actively dodge it. And it had such high numbers and it was so strong to deal with. That's low counterplay, like counterplay ability. So in Janna's case, I think adding a little more to the AD she gets from the shield, you know, maybe it's a change that helps her. I would like to see her maybe be a little more competitively viable because she hasn't been played since like season 3. Champion sucks. Alright, what else? Tanks. The only one I'd really nerf is Nautilus. Like I said, Aftershock Lux, we got that. Nautilus is next. Um, I just saw the Q. I felt like it was just such high damage, low cooldown, and low mana cost that, up the cooldown a little, drop the damage. I think that might put him in line. The champion will still be dumb, and he'll still probably be the best support for autofill players, but I don't know. I don't think he's that far ahead of most supports right now. Let's see. Fighters. Gangplank. This is the only one that I really wanted to deal with. Parley mana is going to go from, it goes like 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, maybe? No, 60, 55. So it loses like 5 mana cost every level. I just want to keep it at 60 flat. If he's scaling too quickly, then, this might help keep him in line. It's a pretty simple change if you ask me, but it helped rein him in. Then mages. Karthus, laying good, jungle bed. Pretty simple. Wall of Pain, I think he uses this inside of the jungle more often on the camps, but he does not use it as often on players. So buffing up the magic reduction, I think that's a really fair change. You're going to see a little more power inside of the laning phase. And then Defile, the mana gain just up by 5 at all levels. Because if you're playing Jungle Karthus, you're not using that E for like the mana gain. You'll get, if you're okay, let's say you're killing wolves. Wolves gives you 75 mana back with this new change instead of what, 60? Yeah, that 15 mana, it does nothing to change how you're losing mana for having to cast Q more often and you're having to cast E. With Lane Karthus, you don't have to cast E like ever unless you're trying to secure a last hit. On top of that, the waves tend to auto push themselves because they have minions. So you're saving a lot of mana already. This allows you to come in and it allows you to throw more Qs more aggressively. Basically, Just give him more power and presence in the lane. I never liked having Karthus have his R buffed. I think that's stupid. I think that's low counterplay. There's not really much you can do. And I said low counterplay ability is a good thing for some champions, but when it's so prevalent and so powerful, sometimes it needs to be reined in, and the changes need to be given to other parts of the champion's kit. To give them more options in other places. And Karthus is notoriously a bad laner, so slight buffs to laning phase. Maybe make it easier to get to that low counterplay ability rather than buffing up the low counterplay ability so hard. Silas, I don't know why he's not put as a fighter. Thanks, Riot. Okay, so he can flex in 3 roles. I think it's really cool to have like these sort of niche picks or these flex picks. But if they're like so powerful, they're the only thing you're seeing in all 3 lanes, that's when they need to be brought down. So real simple, passive, 9 to 60 to 9 to 45. Helps a little with wave clear, helps a little with damage. I don't know what path to take with Silas that much, so maybe something small. Victor. Victor is a concept that I think is a failed one by Riot, just because they don't know what to do with the champion. They're scared of him wave clearing away at lanes, but they made it so that's the only thing he's able to do. It's like past a certain point, you cannot trade with your opponent anymore. You're just gonna get like pushed in, and then they made sure that he couldn't go top because they didn't want to see him bullying tanks either. I think that would get fixed with Klepto, but just to make sure that it stays for a mid lane buff, I wanted to see the aftershock damage go down by 20 at later ranks, and then buff of the death ray by 20 as well. So basically, it's the same damage if you're calculating it entirely, but with the first burst giving you more damage, it's something that's more reliable. It's something that will really help make the champion a bit more effective early on. Vlad, okay. So, same concept with Karthus. You're looking at basically a theme of, can I get to late game? If so, how powerful is my late game? I think with Karthus especially, it's like, can I get to that late game? With Vlad, it's more of a situation of I'm getting to that late game anyways. Vlad can play into top lane and get a free matchup in most cases. Mid lane, it's a little harder, but it's still something where you usually out-sustain your opponent and you can get to the late game without a problem. So, instead of trying to make it a little less reliable or like a little less easy, because I don't really know how to do that in Vlad's case, maybe make E cost more health, but that would just be unintuitive. I decided to just lower the late game scaling, make that a little more fair. So if he's reliably getting that late game, just make that late game less powerful. The AP ratio on his passive goes down from 140 to 130, and the health ratio goes down from 2.5 to 2. So for those people who don't know what his passive does, Vlad's passive gives him, so his AP ratio is 140%. This means for every 100 AP Vlad gets, he also gets 140 health. This is why Vlad gets so tanky. And then with the health ratio, what happens is for every 100, yeah, for every 100 health Vlad gets, he also gets 2.5 AP. I don't know. I haven't always been so sure on that one, but basically, this is why Vlad gets a lot of health. This is why even when he builds health items, he seems to be doing a lot of damage. Nerf this just a bit. Maybe make him easier to punish in the late game. What's that? It's an extra 200, basically 200 HP off his later game. If I'm rating that right. No, I think it's like 100. It's still pretty decent. If we buff summoner spells, I wanted to see some nerfs to Zoe as well. Champion hasn't been great, but like I said, I'm looking ahead at these changes, and if summoner spells get buffed, then Zoe's going to need some nerfs. especially if he exhausts grounds, which in hindsight that's probably not the greatest change, but here we go. So uh, up the Paddle Star cost by 10. Spell Thief cooldown. This was an interesting one. Spell Thief currently has a 0.25-second cooldown from when you cast it to when you pick up another summoner spell, which is why she's able to use multiple flashes in quick succession. I just I just upped the cooldown to 1 second, so I don't know, maybe you have like the ability to throw a skill shot at her while she's mid flash and she can't flash a second time. And then last but not least, give Spell Thief a mana cost. If it's that powerful, then it's going to need something to keep it in line. In my opinion, I think that's one of the dumbest things. Having her have like these bunch of flashes and, not have a mana cost to it. Really, really strong, especially for late game cleanup. And then last but not least, we have the assassins. I think that if we're making like buffing all these other champions, assassins become weaker. So somewhere along the way, these champions need buffs. Shaco, gonna be an obvious one. Champion needs to be reworked. I don't know what to do with this champion. It's just so bad. Like Shaco is a bad champion. He does not provide anything to a team besides some light CC. He does not provide significant damage. He does not provide a really, really good meat shield, and he does not provide the assassin capabilities that Rengar and Kha'Zix have, unless for some reason he gets fed. This is all because I think Riot did not like him having invisibility and just popping up wherever. They felt that it was really low counterplay to have an invisibility that long and that strong, and so I think the champion just needs some sort of rework. He'll probably keep the invisibility in a different form, but at the end of the day, I think that the champion just needs some big changes. So I didn't make any myself. Talon. There is a huge discussion with Talon because some people don't like that he can quote quote endlessly wave clear, but that was mainly at level 9. Level 9 is when everyone just wave clears and gets the hell out of their own lane. I don't think Talon's an issue in this case. However, I do think that, that might make him too strong. Especially because he does not use any of the sustain in the domination tree, so those nerfs might not affect him as directly. So this is the one pick this patch where I would probably say that he is overbuffed if these changes of mine were to hypothetically go through. However, I do think that with the advent of Kiana, 80 assassins as a whole are kind of obsolete. I think it's really important to make sure that Talon has a defined niche. And Riot has nerfed his AoE damage. I think that was a big mistake. And I would like to see changes that would, give him back that AoE damage because I think that it's a really, really cool idea. 80 assassins, as an archetype, have low AoE damage, bad target access, and they just fall off really hard because they're items. And low CC. So if Kiana's gonna have some pretty good CC, um, really good stall through her grass Q, and she gets pretty decent. Yeah, basically though, yeah, and the AOE. So she's got the AOE, she's got the some decent target access, and then she's got like the utility. It would make sense to give some assassins some really really neat tools to allow them to basically carve out a functional role besides snowballing off someone. So for Talon himself, is basically just buffs to the AoE damage. Uh, his Q sees a little bit of nerfs, but that's not going to be enough to change it. Rake gets its cast damage basically increased by 10 at all ranks. Uh, 5 scaling up to 20 with his returns, and then 20 on his R for both casts. Overall, that is going to result in about with the minus 15 from his Q, that's going to be another 35, 75 damage in an all-in late game. I don't know. I think it's a start. I think that, he was an AoE assassin. I think he should have stayed that way. I want Riot to bring him back to that. And like I said, they're carving out niches for champions. They're giving like the shield breaks and the grievous wounds and all that nonsense. And I really want to see that for Talon because assassins are all really, really just bad champions as a whole. Only good when they're overtuned. Let's see. Then Kiana. Kiana should see nerfs, but she's a bit too thick, so she evaded the radar. It absolutely destroyed Riot HQ. Like, she clapped her cheeks last time, blew up the whole building. In reality, I don't know what to do with her right now. I have not taken a really good look into her kit, and I would probably have to do that first before I really made any definitive decisions on what I would like to see for her. And then last but not least is Zed. Zed will, unlike Talon, he will be seeing nerfs through the sustain reduction. And so if mages are getting buffs to Lost Chapter, they're getting basically just functionality buffs, and his sustain is getting nerfed, Zed will probably need some sort of buffs. Again, no clue what to do. I want to see more utility because, Kiana, utility, made AD Assassins kind of obsolete. If you reverse these changes, or you just give them some sort of utility, they will have a role in teams that is not, okay, I'm just going to deal damage. And, while that's fun, while that's something you can occasionally do, that doesn't work as a whole. Like, the only champion that can succeed in that sort of situation is Katarina as an assassin, not as an AD. And that's because Katarina has the resets, which potentially allow her to get a pentakill. With the other assassins, like Arya's an assassin instead. LeBlanc has her double chain. Fizz has his shark, as well as some really, really strong lane power. Kassadin has scaling. Echo is basically a lot of wave clear and a really, really nice stun. Like, these champions all have tools besides I'm mobile and I do damage. So I think it's time we start doing that for AD assassins. Maybe it's AoE. I think that, and it is just damage. I think that that's fine for Talon. Let's make him as a counterpart to Katarina. But for Zed, he is a single target assassin specifically, and I think that, giving him tools that make it easier to do his job would probably be a better route for him. Alright, well, these are the kind of changes I want to talk about. If this is something that gains traction, a lot of people like it, I will do patch rundowns as well. Maybe I'll start making this into like a regular series or something. So tell me what you think. Leave a comment. If there's a champion you think that is fine right now, doesn't need buffs, I'm gonna have a long talk with you. But that's besides the point. Point is though, these are the things I'd like to see. These are the things I think Riot should do. I think they should focus on the runes and masteries, especially more so than the champions, more so than nerfing Azir and Corki. And I really hope this is the change that they kind of make for Worlds this year. All right, peace out.